a lot of people comment on our YouTube channel, and a lot of people comment regularly. One in particular who I always love to mention, because she always leaves like the most incredibly detailed comments, especially for YouTube videos. And we've done full theory episodes just on some of her comments, which is Lady Ashley of Naath. So this is on that subject. So she says, in A Game of Thrones, I think George gives us a cool clue that the White Walkers are looking for Azor Ahai. During Ned's dream about the Tower of Joy, he tells us he could hear Lyanna screaming. Eddard, she called. A storm of rose petals blew across a blood-streaked sky, as blue as the eyes of death. As blue as the eyes of death certainly implies that the others were watching the events at the Tower of Joy, which is interesting because Jon Snow was born there. He is a top candidate for Azor Ahai, so maybe they aren't just looking for a blade, they're looking for the one who will wield it. What's more, Ned's dream is practically a dead-on parallel of Waymar's duel with the others, because in his dream, Ned duels Sir Arthur, a Kingsguard member. Like the others, Kingsguard are sometimes referred to as white shadows. Also, as was the case in Waymar's duel, attention is drawn to a sword. Ned watches Sir Arthur unsheath Dawn and describes it as pale as milkglass, alive with light, which is interesting because Waymar describes the other as having flesh pale as milk. It's curious that Dawn and the others' skin share an appearance. Lastly, the connections between Dawn, be it name or description, and Lightbringer speak for themselves. Maybe because of their own prophecy, they expected the baby born at the Tower of Joy to have that blade, and they mistook Waymar as the guy. I know our minds were blown because I've never made that connection, and I could see it on your face as I was reading it, Jimmy.
Yeah, I had not seen this comment until just now. So this is this is pretty.
This is how we do this sometimes.
Lady Ashley bringing the heaters,
or in this case, the cold stares.
Oh man, Waymar describes the other as having flesh pale as milk. It's curious that Dawn and the other skin share an appearance.
You know, that is interesting because I have never made that connection. That their skin is actually described the same way that Dawn is. Of course, you know, we always look at Dawn as potentially Lightbringer, especially because it's so different than Valyrian steel. And of course, you know, everybody thinks that it was, you know, Starfall and Dawn, and that's going to be the thing to end the long night. But I have never once even like seen that connection, which is that's the crazy thing about A Song of Ice and Fire, is no matter how much you study it, it's all like you can literally like this one little line here, this one little line here.
Yeah, and I do like the idea that maybe the others have their own prophecies, and you know, we've talked about them having their own culture and everything. But if they do in fact are, you know, they're their own civilization and they're fighting for survival, they probably do have prophecies, which have probably descriptions and important characters and legends. And maybe Waymar was the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yeah, because as you said, you know, it sort of turns them into like zombies. Of course, they have zombies, the whites, you know, the WIGHT whites. But in the books, we just don't see them as much. But in this scene, this prologue, they seem far more intelligent than they appear to be in the show. I will also say I did see over on the Free Folk Reddit, which is, you know, the one that makes a lot of memes and everything. I guess there is a scene in season 8, I guess, or season 7. I forgot when Euron Greyjoy asked Jon Snow if the others can swim, and they said no. And then somebody made a comment. They're like, well, then how the heck who drug those like things down to drag the dragon up?
It's a good question.
Like, it's a great question. Well, they just forgot, right? They just forgot they could swim.
Yeah, I really like the fact that Lady Ashley here compares the duel that Ned had with Sir Arthur for the one that Waymar is having with the other. When I read this and I think about as blue as the eyes of death, and if we want to relate that, you know, assuming that we're going to maybe see this again from Bran's POV in the Winds of Winter, like we're expecting to kind of him to be the one that unravels this mystery for us. It makes me wonder if those eyes of death are blood ravens, right?
Ooh.
And is that a connection that we can make between Blood Raven and the White Walker? Why are they blue? You know, I don't know. This is obviously us spitballing off the cuff. So be sure to tell me I'm an idiot in the comments if you want. But these are just where my mind kind of goes. But pale as milk is definitely used for both of those. Pale as milkglass, pale as milk. So is George just not in his bag with his descriptions and running out of things to describe this early in the series, or is it on purpose?
See, I would say it's on purpose because we've talked about color symbolism before. I know we have
Yeah.
a video on that. You look at some of these colors that are mentioned, right? Like arbor gold, right, is mentioned, and it's usually like deception is usually mentioned around there. He definitely uses a lot of themes. Mayhaps is another one, right, where deception is coming. That's obviously not color, but that's a word that's used often, and it's used over and over again, and when it's used you need to pay attention to it. But color is another one of those things. And when Jon is with Arthur Dayne, see, when Jon is with Corin Halfhand,
oh no,
see, now Freudian slip there. It's not Freudian slip because it's true now, maybe. But when Jon is with Corin Halfhand, right, dawn was breaking. They use a lot of that analogy, which is why people make those comparisons. But this one is one I've never at all caught before. The connection of the pale as milk glass describing the others, as well as the sword Dawn, because we really don't see Dawn that much. We hear about it, but we don't really ever see it as much. So I guess perhaps mayhaps a dive into Dawn to see when it appears more, if it does, if we ever get another description of it. And then really the only other time we see White Walkers that they could be described would be the one time when Sam sees one to kill one. So if he describes them as pale as milk glass in that chapter,
then we might be on to something here.
Then we definitely might be on to something.
You got to pull up the trusty search of all Song of Ice and Fire.
We do, yeah, and as well as the wiki. Okay, well, continuing on with that episode, I'll get some of that stuff pulled up here, and we'll turn this into a big one because that's very good.